Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space, where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jenny. I'm here with Kristen, and this is kind of a part 2. If you didn't listen to our last podcast about vulnerability and brokenness, you might want to go listen to that, but we're going to have a part 2 type discussion about some of the things that came up during that podcast. It was big. It was bigger than we thought it was when we started recording it. And after we finished recording that episode, we began to realize that we covered a lot of ground in it. And one of the things we talked about was our need to connect to our own spirit, and then that connection of our own spirit to a higher power, and how that opens up a conversation about your own faith life, your spiritual growth, where your spirit calls home, why that spiritual connection is so important, and how that relates to religion and religious practices. That alone felt like we could spend a whole podcast just on that. But we also talked about the deep healing that has to happen and how we kind of get through events, but that doesn't mean we have healed from them. So we carry them forward. And in the blessing room, I shared a powerful meditation. And through that meditation, so many things came up around the power of vulnerability, how we can look back in our most painful moments and see light and hope and love emerge if we're willing to look for it, which was another big area, right? Because if we don't have a willingness to surrender to the fact that there is maybe a greater plan that we aren't privy to, that perhaps there is a loving creator that does have our back, even when it feels like that's not how it feels in the moment because we're falling apart. So it went into a real spiritual arena. The whole podcast was rooted in love and spirituality and the relationship between the two. To me, they are the same, but we wanted to continue with some of the thoughts that came up for us. Kristen, what are some of the things that you think were important about that episode, or what that episode brought up and helped you work through?
I think for people that truly are seeking a close relationship with their higher power, you have to learn to bring your walls down, because you're never going to connect with that source when you have walls up. So I think that vulnerability in letting those walls down is where you can really connect, because you can't really have control over how you're going to connect with God. You have to surrender, and be willing to see what comes through, I guess. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. The last episode was very powerful for me. And I really think, the main reason we're all here is how to remember how to connect back to your source.
Yes.
And people don't talk about that. People want to go shopping and buy this and buy that and ignore it and watch reality shows. But really, we're trying to go around what we need to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it doesn't work, because then you end up broken.
Right. And it's the point. I think our spirit wants our attention. And if we don't nurture it, if we don't give it attention, if we don't listen to that still small voice inside, if we don't listen to what spirit is guiding us toward, it's trying to get our attention. And sometimes that means falling down, in order for it to help us get back up and say, hey, I am here. I'm here. I am on this journey with you. Hello, remember me?
Right.
It's like we leave that in the back seat sometimes. We don't think about what is it that my spirit needs right now? What does my spirit want right now? What does my spirit want me to know right now? And what you said was beautiful. I think you were saying you have to let your walls down, and that's vulnerability in order to let that light in and that connection to spirit, because we can wall off from it inside ourselves. You also, in the last episode, shared some moments, vulnerable moments around your dad. And, he went through a few open heart surgeries, and you all didn't know if you were going to lose him or not. I happened to be coaching you through that experience. And I remember getting a phone call from you wondering, what do you do? What can I do? And I remember asking you about your beliefs, your faith, your spirituality. Your dad was a man of faith, and you were not in a good relationship with religious institutions. And so when I asked about your faith or your spirituality, the first thing you had said to me is, I am not religious. And I said, okay, but what do you put your faith in? Because we all put our faith in something. Sometimes we put our faith in what we can control, and that's it, but we put our faith in something, right? And you opened up. My experience of you after that was that you opened up. As a matter of fact, you went down and found the chapel inside the hospital and found yourself in that, which will be a story I would love for us to share in another episode, because that's too big for us not to give it the whole episode. But you were willing to let the light in, and I think it burst in, and that was part of what your dad's heart burst open with love, right? And we also talked about, where do we find that? How do people that are so walled off open up to find that, right? Like, how do they look for that light or that lifeline to connect to spirit and connect to a higher power? And what happens when a child is born into a home that isn't a home filled with love, that it's a home filled with brokenness and violence and abuse and trauma? And how do they rise? Can they still find that in their darkness? And my answer to that is yes. I do believe that it's there. It's there somewhere. And even in the darkest experiences that we have, if we look, we'll see it. And I know there's stories of people who were in that situation, but a teacher, a neighbor, someone that crossed their path one day, just a random stranger who offered them an act of love, that showed them kindness. What power that has, because that could be someone's lifeline. We may have done some random act of kindness to a child that was in trouble with their parent, and you just offered a smile to them, a nod to say, I see you and I send you love. That is enough of a seed that when they needed it, it could grow into something, and they may never remember where it came from. But I think when we are connected to our own spirit, and we are connected to a higher power, the perspective of what happens to us along the way changes. And when you realize the power that comes through these hard experiences, we don't resist them anymore, and we don't get as uncomfortable. When I see my clients struggling and going through horrific life experiences, part of what I do is provide that space, not only to hold space for them to get through it and say, you're not alone, but also to say, it's going to be okay. Eventually, we're going to get through this. And to show them grace and to show them compassion and to show them love. Sometimes people will vent out their anger, right? Like, I had a friend and they were just edgy and sharp. And I asked, what can I do? And the first thing that came out was just flames of anger and venom, right? Because they were hurting so bad. And if I reacted to that and either shut down and abandoned them or was like, well, I'm just trying to help, go away. I'm not going to do this. But if I could hold space long enough to say, you are hurting, and I can extend grace and compassion with boundaries, not to keep getting burned by this person, but to say, I can still love you. I just have to put some space until this settles down. All of those examples are ways that we can make a difference and help walk someone closer to finding their own light. And light dispels darkness. It doesn't take very much to dispel all kinds of darkness. So your dad brought so much love and light to you till it's like the flame lit for you. And since then, your spiritual journey has been huge, right? It's been like watching you and even listening on our podcast. And some of these, we bring God into what we talk about because this is a podcast of understanding the power of our spirit and something greater than ourselves that transcends all these stories of pain and heartache. To watch you embrace that and to hear you make the connections, I just know your dad's smiling down on you from heaven when he witnesses that love got passed on and that you've reconnected to it inside your beautiful heart. And your heart was really walled off from it. And now it's just bursting open and full of light. And that is the healing journey and the beauty of doing our work.
Yeah. It's so crazy when you look back, like there's so many different metaphors of like to look at your life as a tapestry. When you're up close, it looks all messy. And then you come and you take a step back and how beautiful it is, like what you have to go through. And for me personally, I feel like my whole journey is bringing me back to my heart, my love, God, like who we are all a part of. Like, of course, you're going to want to keep going back there because you are a part of that. Like, you cannot disown that. And I've been on such a crazy religious faith journey. And I am even surprised at where I am today. Like, I cannot even believe how I've gotten back there. But I think it's all because love kept seeping through the cracks of control and power. And I was willing to let that happen, as painful as that felt. Like, nobody ever wants to associate love with pain. But
no.
They do go together. I mean, how else are you going to truly, truly understand love?
Right. When someone was sharing that they had gone through a loss and they were in the throes of some pretty deep grief. And there was a quote that was shared with them that said, grief is the price we pay for love. And she was saying, I don't know if I like that quote, she wasn't sure if it was meant to comfort her at the time. It was more, she was resistant to it. Like, I don't want to have to pay a price for loving someone. And I said, well, no, but we do. Because that's the human side of the human being, right? The being can love and love and love, and love is what goes on through eternity. But the human experiences separation and a loss and brokenness, and love is the balm to that. So they do go together. I think love is what heals.
I keep thinking too, for people that are thinking back and had these childhoods where they didn't experience love, how do they find it? And that's a really big question, I know.
I just think it's there. I think it's there somewhere. And that's when I feel the energy in our world a lot. It's something I've had to grow to understand about myself because I'm so tuned into different levels of energies. And I didn't have a way to express or explain what I innately knew because I could feel that. There's an energy of love that is never gone. We can program ourselves or tune into it or whatever you want to say. If you open yourself up to connect to it, it's there. It never leaves. So if someone's not exposed to it through human, I do believe that they have the capacity to recognize it. It's like, that's what I came from. I think Marianne Williamson wrote a book that's called Return to Love. And that's what we're here to do, is return to something we already are. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, how was love shown to you? It might have been just this kind neighbor, or someone that you went to when you bought your groceries at the checkout aisle in your local grocery store, and it was just a kind person. We gravitate toward kind people. We gravitate toward people that radiate love. And I don't think that you can go through a childhood and not be exposed somewhere to something, to someone that didn't radiate love. And it just takes a little bit for you to recognize it. And that carries hope for finding it again, or finding it and living it.
I do want to step back 1 second, because that book by Marianne Williamson, I believe it's called A Return to Love, was a very pivotal point in my journey. It was huge. So if anyone is feeling drawn to that book, I highly suggest that you read it. And that was the first book that I gave myself permission to underline and highlight things that were powerful to me. And I actually read that book along with Jenny and another friend of ours, who was a huge opening for me for love and God, which I've thanked her for so many times. And if she's listening, she knows who I'm talking about. But that book has so many seeds in it.
Yes.
So many.
And it's a way, it's a path. So again, she wrote that book, and that book is what's out there for people who aren't seeing it in their environment. They're not finding it. If that you might be that person that you're looking around and saying, man, there's not a lot of love around me right now. I feel swallowed up in darkness. That's where you can find it. There are resources, but you have to be willing to look for them and be open to the message that they bring. And for me, the way those resources show up is to ask. I need something to give me hope. I need something to hold on to. I need something to show me the way. I need something to be a light in this darkness.
That's a good point too. I think one of the biggest first steps is to ask. You're not asking people outside of you. You're just write it down in a journal. You are asking your higher power, whatever that question is. I really want to know what love is. I really want to know what this is. Can you bring me the resources? And I guarantee you they're going to show up.
Every time.
They might not show up in 6 months, but when they finally show up and you remember that you asked that question, you're going to know the power of why you need to ask those questions. And I'm saying it like this because it has been so important in my life when I started asking those questions and asking for help, and things started happening.
And I want to pivot a little bit on that and talk about journaling. When I was in that process, most especially the journey I took with my son through his addiction, and the peaks and the valleys of that journey and the darkness of that journey, I took to journaling in a serious, it was my serious journaling conversations with God. Like, I remember just struggling so much with, how can someone who has a deep faith in God, and, that's an age-old question, if you believe that God is omnipotent and he can do anything, why can't he fix my son? If you can do anything and you answer prayers, why is he still in active addiction? Like, why are my prayers not enough? I would go through so many hard questions like that in my journal, and I would literally write whatever came through. I would just start writing whatever either what I thought God would say, or maybe it was somebody higher than me taking my hand and penning out that answer. But if you will ask the questions and then see and wait and see what shows up, that was the way that I could connect dots to go. There is no question. There is a greater power than us out there. There is not a doubt in my mind. And I could look through the lens of doubt and say, yeah, I doubt that it exists because look what we went through, and I could say, well, if it weren't up to this and this and this, it was us that saved him. That would be my ego. That would be me shutting out God, which is edging God out, is how some people define ego, EGO, edging God out, is that we do that rather than looking at it from a place of what if, what if that all happened? And I cannot not believe, because of the journey and watching faith move mountains just in that one section of my life. It was so incredibly undeniable in the coincidences. I prayed for angels. When I started talking about the energy I sensed, I could sense an angel crossing a path. It literally would be like here and then gone, but I do believe that we're sent angels to walk among us. And I believe that when children are raised in brokenness, or they're not exposed to any type of spiritual practice or any type of understanding that they can connect internally to their own spirit, that angels come and teach that. I think they're among us, and I know I've encountered them. And I think that we get to also be that love in the world. I think we have to, and I want to charge all of you to be that for someone, be that person who reinstills someone's belief in love, in a higher power, in themselves. Be the person to take that love and do something with it out in our world every single day. We need it so much. Our world is hurting. We have our stories, we have our wounds, we have our sad circumstances, and we can you don't have to look too far to see that there's other people going through far worse. And I know I still need it, and I know others do too. So we wanted this podcast to be dedicated to that, to be love in action. And Kristen's dad, at his memorial service, that was the theme of the service, is that, her dad was love in action. And she began a deeper spiritual commitment to be that in his honor. And it's so relevant to why we started this podcast. Her story was a part of why I wanted her to be a part of this, sharing our journeys together, because while it is a healing, and there's funny stories that we've gotten over, and there's tragic stories that we've had to heal through, but they're all stories that came into our experiences bringing love. And if we don't look for it, we might not see it. If we don't want to believe that, we certainly won't see it. But that is what we want. We want this podcast to be done with love, for you to be returning and seeking and holding on to what is the only thing that truly is real and remains, is love.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I wanted to step back real quick about the journaling. Pen and paper have been so powerful to me, like in a love at a powerful level I could have never imagined. But when I open myself up and ask questions and I get answers, I just want to say that whatever you first hear, and it's not like you're hearing some unknown voice. It's like you're hearing for me, it's like you're hearing your thoughts, but it's just coming, like I'm open for it to come through. And this is getting really vulnerable for me to even say this, but I can journal with my dad. And sometimes like the first thing I'll hear will sound so corny, like life is like a box of chocolates. And this literally happened in one of my journalings with my dad. And I think that's what I want to say is I think first your ego starts to journal, but then the more that you write and whatever you hear, just write it down. Because the more you're writing, the more open you're going to get. And then that's where the message is. Like it might not be the first 3 sentences or whatever. But for me with my dad's, I feel like very comical with me. But with the messages, like the one that was life is like a box of chocolates, his whole message went with that. And I just had to trust that. And my dad is corny with corny dad jokes. And so he brought it all full circle.
Right.
But what I want to say is, if you can be open with pen and paper for whatever wisdom needs to come through, it is such an exercise. I cannot even explain. And Jenny taught me this.
Yes. I mean, I am profoundly passionate about keeping a journal and sharing, not a diary. A diary is today, this is what I did. This
That's what I wanted to tell the difference. I really wanted to.
Right. It's not a diary. A journal is an interactive conversation between your heart and your mind. It's a interactive conversation about what you're questioning about life, and then what thoughts do you have about that question, and just starting and asking yourself, why is that important to me? And then write it down, and then say, and why do you feel that way? And then write more. The deeper you go into that journaling time, session, whatever, when you sit down to journal, the more that you will give it time and go deeper, amazing things are going to come through. And then what's really fascinating is if you go back and read it, a lot of it is prophetic. A lot of it really does play a role in where it led you to and where you're guided to. It's like, wow, look what happened. When John was going through his addiction journey, it was a long, decade-long journey. I picked one year. I just started the year, and I had, in my sense of feeling powerless, I'm like, what can I do? And I would write him a text, and I sent it to him, and his dad and I were in a text, and I wrote him a text every day. Sometimes it's, I don't know where you are. Right now, I don't know if you're even alive, because there would be times when we couldn't reach him. And it started that way. And sometimes it would be, this is what's going on here at home. Wish you were here. Some days it would be, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling to hold on. And I don't know what to do right now. I want to be strong for you and for our family, but this is really hard. And I was just vulnerable and honest for about one paragraph. And then I would follow that with a prayer. I would write a prayer, my prayer, not just for a request for him to be okay, but it was what I needed to be okay. And when I started praying, it was more a prayer for me, like, God, here's what I need, here's how I'm feeling, here's what I fear, and I give this over to you, right? And I would write that. When I finished, I did that for a year, and my husband actually had it put into a hardbound book, and we read it. And when you look ahead, you see the footprints, you see the request, the ask for that higher power to help. And then you see days later where the phone rang and I found out you were okay. And I had prayed for an angel to stop you from a fatal decision. And I would hear how someone found you and got you to help. It's uncanny when I look back and reflect on when we just stop to ask, and we then put our faith that someone will answer that in whatever way it needs to be. And this is delicate because I have so many, sadly, I know so many people who were so faithful, who prayed so hard as moms of children in the throes of addiction, and their children have overdosed and died. And I still sit in that question. Why? Why do some make it out and why do others not? And one of the things that my son said to me is that in their world, when someone dies, they say they're the lucky ones because they're left with that struggle. And it is a struggle. It is hard. And they feel like that's one way to be freed of it. And I think that was a way of just finding some comfort and handling survivor's guilt because they were still here. I carry survivor's guilt. Like, I don't know why I still have my son and other mothers do not, or their daughter. But in that, and we will be talking more about that journey in upcoming episodes, but I want to say for this one that that journey did deepen my connection. It did make it an undeniable truth in my life that there is God and that it's rooted in love. And love is what helps get us through. It helps us to carry on. And you have to be open to it. You have to be willing to interact with love always. And I don't know, there's so many parts that I could go into, and I want to save those for an upcoming episode. But I want everyone out there to know that if you will just connect the dots, look at, start practicing, start a journal where you ask, and then go back and look at what was the answer. Sometimes that answer, you ask for something and you want it to be in a certain way, you put an expectation on it. A lot of my asks were answered, but not the way I wanted that answer to look. And so it's accepting it with a belief that it's serving a higher good, and that one day I'll understand. One day I'll know the answers to all the mysteries along the way. And I don't get to be privy to all of that right now. And that's okay.
I think this is making the obvious for what is going to be found in the blessing room is journal prompts for these questions.
Yes.
To really start opening up your heart. And
I agree. I think we can move over into that, and we will have for you in the blessing room over on Patreon. If you're new to journaling, or you sit down and you do the diary version of, I'm trying to keep a journal and just all there is just, what am I doing today? Instead of going into your soul and into your heart and into what really matters to you. And if it's new, it's hard. It's really like, you stare at the blank page like, I don't know how to start. So we will have for you in the blessing room some of those ways to begin your journal prompt each day and a format to follow. And then let yourself just keep going. Once you get the engine running of the journal engine, like once you get going, you can just keep on rolling. And the longer you will stay with it without stopping to analyze it, just let it flow. When you stop to analyze what you're writing, you go back up in your head and you close off from spirit, right? And this is having your spirit have a voice. One time I did a dialogue with my spirit, and if you don't know you have one, that's step one. We all have a spirit, we're a spiritual being having a human experience. So the human, Jenny, wrote to the spiritual Jenny saying, here's what I'm thinking, and I don't really know what to do. What would you want to do? And those thoughts come flowing through onto paper. There's just a spark of intrigue in that experience alone that makes you go, wait, what was that? Where did that come from? Right? Don't analyze it. Just let it have its voice and go with it. And it's so healing and it's so powerful and it's intriguing. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it really, I mean, you're getting to know your inner well. It's amazing. I think another thing to do, if journaling kind of sounds like a big task to you, or like, that's not for me, another avenue to take with these questions that you'll find, or your own question, is through meditation. Like, play some very relaxing music, set a timer for 10 minutes, because you have to allow some time. It's not going to come through in a second. When you ask the question, it might take some time for your body to relax, to start hearing whatever, or visualizing whatever you're going to see. Is ask a question and then be silent for however long the timer is, and see what comes through. And nothing may come through in that time frame, but I guarantee the process is gonna keep happening in the next couple of weeks, because you put the question out there.
I agree. And this is a practice. And I want to say that in that moment of silence is what we were talking about in the last episode, the power versus control. Because if we're trying to sit and control the process of meditation, you're not surrendering to allowing the power of meditation to emerge, right? So it really is this delicate balance of letting go and surrendering.
Your ego is going to struggle with you.
Oh, yeah, it will.
It could be frustrating. You might want to get up, but have this higher knowing of there's something underneath all this. There's something underneath there. I'm going to let my ego settle down.
Yes.
And I even remember, this is kind of going on a tiny bit of a tangent, but I had gotten away from meditation for a while and I was trying to get back into it. And the first 5 or 6 sessions, I would only do 5 minutes. I would find myself feeling physically irritated. Like I wanted to grind my teeth. I could not sit there. But I knew underneath that I could push through it. And I finally got to a place where I could relax in meditation. But because you have to learn to trust yourself. I think that's another thing too. Like a lot of people don't trust themselves.
Right. And that's a trigger, right? Because if you don't trust yourself and you don't have a connection to a higher power that you trust, that is scary. That's a scary place.
Right. And don't be hard on yourself if you don't trust yourself. There's a reason of how you got to where you are. Just be willing to be open.
Yeah.
Just be willing. And I guarantee you so many magical things are going to start popping up.
It is an amazing journey, getting into that spiritual journey of healing and growth and development, both in relationship to yourself and to spirit. It's just an incredibly rich journey, and you will have a power struggle with your own ego to surrender to the journey itself. But if you will start, we promise you it is an amazing thing. And that's one of the things that the byproducts of why we do what we're doing on this podcast is to invite you into this space that we have been immersed in and seeing miracles happen and growth and development, just facing life together on this path with better and stronger tools to use. So wrapping up today's conversation, which is our part 2 about what it takes to transcend the heartbreak and the vulnerability and the brokenness that life sometimes delivers to us. And it's inevitable that we all go through that, but that you access that power within to rise back up and stand tall, and not just in spite of it, but embracing it so that you actually flourish and thrive because of it. And doing it because of it instead of in spite of it is a beautiful healing process and growth process. So we hope you'll try some of the things that we've talked about. We hope that you'll get in touch with some of the things that you've gone through and claim what you learned, claim the lessons that came from that. Go back and look at the good that came from that, not just the heartbreak of it. And, keep all of that in a journal and start a journaling practice, start a meditation practice, but just stay on the path. It's leading you somewhere. I hope that you know and trust that it's leading you home to your own heart and soul and spirit. So wherever you go and whatever you're doing, do it with great love. Be love in action. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart, and I just need to share this with you right now. Please know This podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself and do so with love.